Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I want to walk you around the brand new 8th generation 2024 BMW i5. All right, guys, I'm really excited to walk you around this brand new BMW 5 Series. Now, this is really a whole new generation of 5 Series for BMW. So not only are we going to be taking a look at the i5 today, of course, there's gasoline versions. There's going to be a mild hybrid version available later into 2024. And then in addition, there's actually going to be the new wagon. And that will be, from what I understand, sometime probably the first quarter or second quarter of 2024. So BMW really is going to give the entire suite of options here. Now, the i5 is just out. I'm really excited to walk you around this car. And if you ever saw my i7 review, what I find really interesting is the elements that were new to the i7. They've now brought a lot of them into the new i5. I'm really excited to walk you around, so let's go and get started on the outside. I want to show you what that looks like. We're going to walk through the whole car, and then we'll take it out for a drive. But let's start at the front. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get started here on the outside. And there will be some design differences between, for example, the i5 or a gas version or the diesel version for that matter. But there's some design elements that even as BMW continues to iterate and improve the models and change the models over time, some things remain. For example, I really do like the BMW quad headlight design. And you can see how the DRLs or halos have been moved now to the outside on these BMW LED headlights, which you can also tell. You can see the blue accents in the headlights themselves, and you'll have that whether you have the standard headlights or the shadow line lights. But the other thing that I really do like about this model, I will admit, I'm pretty fond of the light up kidney grills. Now, as you look, you can also see how that center sensor has been moved to dead center of the kidney grills, including the front camera. Now, of course, with the i5, there's less venting in the kidney grills. It doesn't need it, where the gasoline or diesel version later in 2024 will have more slats and venting as you go through it. But as we work our way around the car, you can see where design elements have been taken from, the new X5, the new X7, I'd say even the G87, but as you can see, the mirror design is very similar as we go around. Flat door handles, like for example on the G87. I do like that BMW continues the Hofmeister kink back here in the back, though it has a 5 Series badging back in the kink. Now as we look around, BMW also continues with their LED taillights. And really, each model kind of has its own distinct style. These are much more of a kind of flat design with a little bit of an expansion at the end instead of, kinking up or down as each model tends to do. It helps each model be distinct. And this will be the same on whether you have gas or the iDrive car. Now, as we look at this, the other thing that I tend to like on some of the bigger models is you even get the badging in the B pillar here in the center. Now, we'll take a look in the interior in just a second, but all in all, it looks really, really good. And just for the heck of it, let's pop the hood. All right, just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and pop the hood. Now, you look at probably the largest motor cover, or what normally we would call an engine cover ever, really just covering the entire space. And even as we pop this on this M60 model, which is why it has the M badging, you can see there is not a lot to show under there, as one would expect from an iDrive, right? There's no motor. You only have your electric motors out at the wheels, and you've got your battery packs and everything else, but you just have this big cover to cover the whole thing. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the interior and some of the things they brought from the i7 into the i5. All right, on first approach to the interior, and yeah, these are a little bit dark, so forgive me, but there's some really interesting design elements in this car. Now, by default, this actually has a vegan interior. So this is a non-leather. You can get a leather option if that's what you'd like, but by default, and these are the sport seats because BMW is actually installing the sport seats also by default. Now, you can get the comfort seats if you'd like to order those. They're definitely a lot softer. These will hold on to you a little bit better as you potentially change the interior. Now, we'll take a look at the trim here in a second, but this is actually kind of cool. I've never seen BMW do trim like this. So this wood trim with essentially metal accents through them that looks like grain. I really like it. So like the grain in the wood. It has a very actually Asian kind of Japanese style to me. But let's go ahead and take a look at the interior and all the rest of the options. Okay, I mentioned a second ago before we jump into the rest of the interior, I really do like this trim. And maybe this is a trim package I haven't seen before on some other models, but this is the first time I've seen it. And like I said, it has a very Asian feel to me. It feels like that Japanese style of repairing broken pottery where you use gold. I really like this effect. I think this suits really well. Might be a decision I might make if I was going to buy one of these new 5 Series. But one of the things I didn't want to miss is this gigantic panorama sunroof. This is so cool. I do love these giant sunroofs. And then in addition, of course, this has the rear shade. So this has the window shades on the back seats as well that you can pull up, but it also has the remote control rear shade, which is really kind of cool. So maybe you have your kids in the car and they desperately need a nap. That's a good way to cut some of the light. All right, so let's jump in and take a look at the rest of the interior. All right, so let's talk about this iDrive a little bit and how BMW continues kind of to iterate the design and the user experience or user interface or UI as you work with this. Now, the big difference between 8 and 8.5 is that you now have these quick select tiles here on the side. So instead of tiles going left, right, and you have to change all of the tiles depending on what you're doing, like if you wanted to keep navigation up, you now can go through them just here on the left without any major disruption to what you're doing unless you actually go into your select. Now also keep in mind anything you see flashing on the camera, that's just due to the refresh rate of the camera. You won't see that with your eyes, right? But this really is a big design change for BMW. Some of the elements look similar. So with some of the newer cars with the iDrive 8, this menu UI looks very similar for your navigation, all depending on what level of detail that you have installed, of course, or selected, excuse me. But as you go through them all, it really is this quick select here on the side that makes the biggest difference as you go through the UI and can potentially get you through the sections of what you want to do a little bit faster. Now, of course, this being the i5 and this is the M60 model, you can put in all of your advanced navigation to show you charging suggestions. If you put in a destination further than what your current charge is, it will make predictive suggestions on the best place to stop and charge. For example, because you can see a charging station here on the map directly. So you can actually plan your stops along the way. Now, the funny thing about this as well is this new i5 has what they're calling the Air Console gaming platform. And it's a form of in-car gaming that really is kind of unique to the automotive section. So this actually lets you play some casual games while the vehicle is stationary, right? So something you could potentially do while you are charging your car if you're going on a longer drive, then you have range. Now, the one thing I do love about BMW is that if you're a soccer fan, you can also see Bundesliga. And if you're like, what is Bundesliga? That is the German national soccer division. So you could actually get a chance to watch some soccer here in your car, which would be a lot of fun. That helps me pass time. I'm a big soccer fan. But lots of different options as we look through this. Of course, as you look at the center console, there are so many different options of how you can configure your center console depending on what mode you're in and everything else that you go through. But your modes are really going to depend on how the car is set up. Now, this being a demo and it's not set up with a BMW ID into the car yet or anything like that, we do have a few limited options to show. But this large display, since we first saw it on the XM, I am a really big fan of it. Obviously, I've got it in my own G87. It's really grown on me, and I find that it works really, really well, and I like how this UI and the setup works. I don't find it distracting in any way. And one of the best ways to be able to tell is if you actually look, and as I put the camera up to the eye line, this is what my eye line is looking out of the car. If you notice, the edge of the display is actually here. I've definitely had some folks be very concerned. They feel like maybe the display would stand up into your eye line while you drive the car. That is not the case to my experience in driving these cars. BMW's done a really good job in the layout of how this display sits, so it really doesn't interfere with what you do. Now, in addition to this, BMW also has their new flat bottom steering wheel. So this is a new design for the 5 Series, and you have a couple of options here depending on what you'd like to do on either a 2-spoke or 3-spoke steering wheel, and this new flat design with the M steering wheel. All right, so a lot of different options here. Let's go ahead and get it out on the road. We'll talk about the adaptive suspension, range, and other details since this is the i5. But let's take it out for a drive. And the one thing that I just never can quite get over with these iCars is how quiet they are. So not only in road noise and everything else, but of course, no motor, no engine, right? So this is going to be a really interesting driving experience, and each car is going to be a little bit different with the new gasoline version or the diesel version when it comes out later in 2024. But this is all about the iDrive today and the experience of this. So what I want to do is take you guys for a little bit of view of Seattle if you're not from the area, but also just give you a little bit of sense of what it's like to drive this car, and hopefully encourage you to come down and try it yourself. Now, there's a lot of different modes, of course, and this being the M60, we have some M modes that we can deal with that are also going to change the horsepower depending on what we're doing. And of course, it even has launch control, which is always a lot of fun. Now, when you look at this, the horsepower and torque on this car is really impressive. And when you're looking at 517 horsepower, or if you're in sport mode, you're actually looking at 601. So you're looking at almost 100 horsepower jump. You're also looking at 549 foot-pounds of torque, or in my sport mode or M launch mode, you're actually looking at more than that, which is really impressive at 605. So really big jumps out of both, and really set up for what you're going to do. We're going to drive this in just the normal kind of comfort mode or my mode initially, and then we'll try, of course, the M mode as we get out. But let's show you a little bit of Seattle in fall. It's kind of a pretty day today, and I want to show you on a typical drive and what it's like to drive this car. Impressions. This is the very first time I've driven this car, and I will say, and I know that there are a lot of configurable options in EVs, and especially something like this i5, but I will say that this is the most aggressive regenerative braking of any EV I've ever driven. Now granted, I probably could have changed the settings on some of the other cars to be at their most aggressive, but in this, my mode here, this essentially the standard efficient or comfort mode, man, the regenerative braking is really aggressive. The moment you lift off your foot and the car, I mean, it feels like you're stepping on the brake. So it is a really interesting thing, and I think it would take a little bit of adjustment to get used to, but I'm sure you would get used to it very, very quickly. And it's also going to be different, of course, as you go into sport mode and some of the other modes. The other thing that I would expect, and we are getting in this case, is really quick acceleration. I mean, as you would expect from an EV where power is instantaneous out to the motors, and this has a motor on both the front and rear axle, that there's no spin up, right? Your motor doesn't have to spin up. This is a very quick, almost instantaneous acceleration. So it is really easy to get in and out of traffic so far. Back in those curves that we take on to get here onto the highway, they handle the curves very, very well with very little body roll. Takes a little bit of adjustment for me coming out of a smaller and lighter car, but it really did handle just fine. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the lake a little bit more of the drive. We'll talk some more about the features as we go. In Seattle, it's not raining today. And I really do like this bridge on a test drive because the expansion joints on this bridge are really, really big. Now, this car does have the adaptive suspension, so you can change your settings as you go through your modes, but these expansion joints, like that one that we just go over, can be pretty sharp. So I often find it as a great way to kind of measure the responsiveness and how the ride is going to feel on any given car on a test drive that I do. Whether you're driving something more sports oriented like an M2, where you go over the bumps and maybe they're a little bit harsher, but they're over and quick and the car is really tight, or does it absorb the bumps for a much more comfortable ride depending on your settings, especially with adaptive suspension like this car. But I really do like this bridge as a great test drive, plus it's a great view. So let's give you a little bit more of the view. We'll drive through and then we'll take my favorite on-ramp to come back and we'll test out the acceleration. A quick loop here, as you would have if you came out and brought this car out for a test drive. This is also one of my favorite on-ramps just to get back onto the highway. It gives you the ability to really kind of get on it a little bit and get a sense of acceleration. Now, as always, I'm always respectful in any test drive that I do, simply for the fact that this is a test drive of a new car and it's still within break-in period and so on. I'm going to drift back a little bit to let some Mercedes out go. So we'll get on it here. Got a car behind us, but let's get on it. Yeah, okay. Well, I ran out of space there really quickly. Yeah, so the car behind us is now about 10 car lengths behind us, and I gained on that Mercedes really, really quickly. That was impressive, and that was not a full throttle acceleration by any stretch of the imagination. That was impressive, guys. Yeah, the M60 really gets up and goes. Let me tell you, I'm in sport mode right now. 601 horsepower instantaneously to the wheels. That was impressive. And I'm used to driving high horsepower cars, guys. You know, my previous M2 was 745 horsepower, and that was really impressive. I wish I had a little bit more space to go, but in some ways I'm a little bit grateful for that Mercedes, because I think if I'd got on it a little bit more, I would have gotten onto the freeway a little bit faster than perhaps I should have been. But if you're looking for acceleration, that was impressive. It pressed my head back into the seat. So one more reason to have the sport seats instead of the comfort seats, but that's just me. So the other thing that really stands out to me is the technology in this car. First of all, it's very, very quiet, which is impressive. It's really nice. You generally just hear road noise primarily, or tire noise. Cars beside you, you don't hear very much. So if you want a quieter ride, this is a great way to go. But then in addition, I really do love all the technology. Some of the stuff is just standard. It's not necessarily new for this model. You know, when you look at the surround cameras and the backup assistance, and you look at all of the safety features, I mean, some of them aren't new. I mean, they're improved on every generation. But I'm really impressed, and in some ways I'm a little envious. I mean, my new G87 doesn't have surround cameras, which is a bit of a disappointment. I really was surprised that it didn't have it. I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't. It's really nice to have a car that does. But when you look at it, this really is intended to be that mid-size sedan. You can get all the options in it. If you get the M60, you're going to get the performance as well. So all in all, I'm pretty impressed, and the technology level is really, really good. But the idea of this is really to kind of take it out for a test drive, give you a sense of what it would be for you to get out and drive it as well. We accelerate here as much as traffic will allow. Yeah, that is really quick, guys. Now, and in sport mode, the regenerative braking is significantly less aggressive. I mean, I lifted my foot and the car felt more like a gasoline vehicle of just letting off on the throttle. So that was a similar feeling, though of course those are all configurable settings as you go through the car. The standard mode is very aggressive, surprisingly aggressive. Enough so that if I own this car, I'd either get used to it, which I probably would, or I might adjust the aggression on that down just a little bit through the settings. But all in all, this is a really comfortable car. I do love this gigantic panorama sunroof that you can get. It is one of the things I like. Now, the one other thing I don't ever really can't capture on camera in the drives is the heads-up display. I do love how they are configurable. They are significantly better than they used to be. They're much wider and taller. And then they also, as you go through your mode, so I'm in sport mode right now, and I go back to just personal mode, the heads-up display changes. The information that it shows changes. It will read stoplights, or excuse me, it will read speed signs as you go and will advise you on what your speed should be. All of those sort of features, but I do love as your center dash changes between the modes, so does your heads-up display, which is really a great function. I'm really kind of at the point now with the heads-up display that I really kind of see it as one of those must-have features. It adds so much value to driving. You don't have to look down, you don't have to look away, and it really is improved and even better than it's ever been before. So I highly suggest it. All right, guys, let's take the rest of the drive back, and then we'll take it back to the dealership. All right, guys, so back here at the dealership, really after what is just a really quick around-the-block test drive, essentially, I really want to give you a sense of what it would be like to take this car out, do a quick walk around, and check out the features and everything else. And I strongly recommend you actually come in and check it out yourself. Take a look at the options, see how this fits you, see how the seats feel, all those really important things that you have to do on your own to get a sense of what the car is like. All in all, I really like this. If I was going to have a mid-size sedan, this is definitely it. And the i5 here, the performance is really, really impressive. So all of the features you can get along with it, plus that sport mode acceleration was very impressive. Very, very impressive. So not only that, you're going to have a four-door sedan, but it's going to get up and go when you need it to. I love all the features and the technology, and I love all the direction that BMW is taking these new cars. Now, I'm really grateful to BMW Seattle, as always, to allow me to come in and test drive their car and give you a sense of what it would be like to do the same. And I really encourage you to come down, check them out if you're in the Seattle area. Come down and test drive this car, see what it's like. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to click like and subscribe. It honestly makes a big difference to my channel. I would really appreciate if you do so. And I look forward to seeing you on my next video.